Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to the Loggers Shoot Interview. I'm your host and moderator, Pez Merriweather. I'd like to welcome at this time Lumberjack Manley, Jack Manley, and the mighty Dagon Briggs. Welcome, guys. Thank you for being here. Just for background's sake, for anybody who doesn't know the stories of how you guys got into the business, maybe each give your take on where you guys were trained, who you were trained by, and your thoughts on your first match.
I mean, you got vet status on that one, bro.
All right. When I first started, I actually went to WCW's power plant, and I made a 3-day tryout. After my after my 3-day tryout, I was introduced to what they would like to call my bill, and what it would cost for me to stay there for a month, on end. So I decided it was best for me to go back to Jacksonville and get into some independence, which I really didn't know anything about at the time, but I found a independent Maurice Williams, the Florida Hurricane, Thunder Wrestling Federation, if anybody's ever, known about the Urban, and, I mean, really just got my foot in the door. I was able to get in a ring, and not really much training, just a professional wrestling ring that we paid to fix, and, it went from there.
How about your first match?
First match was god awful. The big gimmick on the first match was because we were going to Colorado for 3 months, so we had to injure ourselves at the end of the match. And we did like a double clothesline over the top rope and managed to land ourselves on the guardrail and break the guardrail and like worked it up pretty awesome in front of 15 people who bought it.
Yeah.
And then we disappeared for 3 months on a show that didn't run.
Just backtracking for a second, you mentioned the power plant. Did you encounter anybody interesting at the power plant while you were there for 3 days?
Lash LaRue was there at the time. Like the guy Sarge was there. AJ was training at the time. Like Diamond Dallas Page was like big deal back then, so he was there a lot. High Voltage was the tag team.
Oh my god, dude.
They were like big deal back then.
That one dude, what was it? Kenny,
Kenny Chaos.
Kenny Chaos, like, I hear he's like originally from Anchorage, dude. Like, I remember going to a house show, when the Fed came through Anchorage. It was probably like back in like '92. And at the top of the card, it was Macho and Ric Flair, dude. And, I think he jobbed out to like Max Moon or something like that, dude. It was awesome, like, to look back at it now, because I remember I would watch WCW TV and I'd hear them say he's from Anchorage, and I'd just be like, yeah, whatever, dude. Yeah, ain't nobody coming from Anchorage. Dude.
He was actually a really awesome dude. Like, when I was at the plant, he was probably one of the few people that like took time to like yap with me and like try to keep me there.
Yeah, you're the only person who wasn't kayfabing him.
Yeah.
All
right, so moving on to you, Jack. Did you start in Alaska, or I know you went to California for a while? Give us your story, your little background.
Oh man, I started in some kid's backyard up in the hillside of Anchorage. This kid built a ring out of plywood, and this kid was pretty smart, man. He built a ring out of 2x4s and all that stuff. He had a cable suspension underneath the ring, and he used a stack of tires as like the
suspension.
Yeah, as the shock spring or whatever. And we just kind of screwed around with that. And there was this guy in town named Mike Madness. So what happens? There's this guy named Al Burke and Nick Danger. They were running a wrestling school in Anchorage for like this brief period of time, and at the time I was like 14, 15 years old, so I couldn't get up in there or whatever. But then after all that went down, Mike Madness, he decided he wanted to start his own thing. And somehow, some way, because we used to put all these videos of all of the stuff that we did on the internet, and like somehow, some way, he got wind of it and came and checked us out one day, and decided to use me and this kid, Matt Pretty Boy Floyd was his name. And we had our first match at the Mountain View Rec Center in front of like 30 people, and 20 of them were like kids we went to high school with and whatnot. And man, I've never had a lick of training before.
More backyard.
Yeah, it was just a couple of backyard kids having a match,
just
for
renting out of
free.
youth centers, basically.
Yeah. And I remember like,
awesome.
man, like to look back at that now, it's just funny because like I had this Power Ranger outfit at the time, dude. It was bad. It was so bad. And like it was funny too because like at that time I didn't know any better, so like we used to choreograph the matches, like we would write, we script them out like on paper, like move for move and whatnot. Nobody bothered to say, hey man, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, why are you doing that? You know? I remember going to Al Burke and being like, yo man, peep out my match. And he kind of glanced over, he's like, yeah kid, that's good, yeah. And that was it, man. And for the first couple of years, like that's kind of how it was. And then like, it's funny too, because at the time, Mike Madness ran like a show, and then after that, some other guy from that original wrestling school broke off and started his own thing, which was the AWF, the Alaska Wrestling Federation. And we stopped working for Mike, and we jumped ship to the AWF, and we started running shows out of the 4th Avenue Theater downtown in Anchorage. And, you know, that was an awesome time, man. That was a good time. I had a lot of fun doing that. And then that kind of petered out. And that, toward the end, by the end, like, I was pretty much doing everything, man. I was booking the show. I was, you know, production was all there. Like, I was putting the ring up. Like, I was doing everything, all of it.
How about moving on to the dojo in California?
Well, from there, after I left Anchorage, finally, I originally moved to Las Vegas. And when I was out in Vegas, I started training under Cowboy Scott Casey, which was invaluable experience because Cowboy Scott Casey, you know, he's from the old school, man. Like, he came up working for Tully Blanchard's dad out in San Antonio, and like, you know, worked for the Funks and all that, man. And like, he wasn't so much for technique, but man, he taught you how to work a crowd, you know what I mean? Like
psychology.
He would give you those things like, yo man, you know, when you throw a punch, come from downtown with it because you're trying, you know, dude in 99 ZZ needs to see what's going on, and like, you know, those thoughts aren't entering your head until someone points them out to you.
Straight
you know?
theater stuff.
Yeah, like, you know, over exaggerate your motions because the dude sitting in the nosebleeds needs to know what's going on, you know, and yeah, it was awesome. And then from there, going out to the New Japan Dojo and out in LA was a different experience because that's where all the technique came in, you know, and you know, I mean, it was definitely like an eye-opening experience because you like, it was the first taste of like anything remotely big league, you know what I mean? Like, it was an actual New Japan ring, which was stiffer than hell, you know what I mean? And like, I trained under Shinsuke Nakamura and Rocky Romero, and like, you know, Rock is crazy, man. Rock would be doing like lucha drop kicks off the top rope during like, you know, classes and whatnot, like in front of nobody, like for what, dude? Like, why would you do that? Like, what would enter your mind to do that? But he would, man, and like, that's just how they rolled out there, man. It was crazy. And we, you know, lived, like, slept in the attic of, you know, this warehouse they turned into a training facility for 6 months at a time. And, you know, like, God, I couldn't even go, I could sit here for hours and just go on about all the insane things I witnessed out there. But in terms of the training and the whatnot, it definitely, like, yeah, I felt like it brought me full circle because with Scott Casey, he taught me how, you know, how to work the crowd, and then at the New Japan Dojo, they taught you how to like work, you know what I mean? And then from there, I moved back out to Vegas for a hot minute, and then I found my way out to Jacksonville, Florida, and you know, yeah, you know, and it just all steamrolled from there, you know.
Speaking of which, though, before we get too far ahead, like back when I was in elementary school, these cats in my neighborhood, they built. I didn't know anything about independent wrestling. Like when I got into wrestling, it was because when I was a kid, all I got into was like Saturday Night Main Event. I grew up in Atlanta and Savannah, Georgia, so it was all WCW most of the time until I was a teenager because it was just straight territory. But when I was in elementary school, we had the whole neighborhood up the street behind this convenience store. Somebody had built a ring out of pallets, moving blankets, and then stop sign posts and hose, and that was how they built the ring. Yeah. And they had a belt that we built also out of the same stop sign that we took the post off of. And it had like pins on it from different countries, but basically we just beat the shit out of each other. and then whoever walked away got the belt that week.
Yeah.
I actually still have the belt, which is probably a bacteria nest. But that was kind of the birth of it all, you know.
It's funny too, because like the kid that built the ring, like he actually did a good job, man. Like the ropes were actual. Like he lived in the hillside of Anchorage, is where like rich people live, you know. So like he had money, so like
some carpentry.
Yeah, well, like you know, the canvas was an actual canvas. The ropes were actual ropes.
He did his homework.
Yeah, like he had legitimate turnbuckles. Like the only thing that was makeshift was like the stack of tires for the shock spring. Everything else was like for real, dude, and like. It's just crazy to see the ingenuity of all that, you know what I mean? Like
we were breaking shit every step we took.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like the ring was built out of wood, so obviously, you know, sooner or later things started to break or whatever. But I mean, like you know, canvas was an actual canvas. Underneath the canvas was, you know, carpet pad. You know, like it was as close to like a legitimate ring as you could get from a 15-year-old building it in the backyard, you know what I mean? It was insane, dude.
Before we get to how you guys met, any interesting gimmicks either of you had in your early days that you'd like to divulge?
When I first started with the AWF, they didn't want me to be Jack Manley, so like they were like, yeah, man, you know, we need a luchador. We need a luchador, and like, you know, I didn't own any masks or anything like that, so like,
you do now.
Yeah. So I was El Pistole, and then it was funny because like the whole birth of El Pistole was like we used to go over to somebody's house and watch, you know, Fed pay-per-views and whatnot, and there was this dude that would do like he was a mark for Eddie Guerrero, and like his big thing would be like anytime Eddie would come out, he'd be like, "Oh man, I'm Eddie Guerrero, man, I'm gonna get you with my El Pistole, Holmes," and like just being obnoxious, dude. So like we go out there and like you know, like they want me to be a luchador, and I'm just like, well, alright, you know, like what do you want me to be? They're like, well, we were hoping you could figure that out, you know what I mean? So like, you know, I'm thinking Mexican and luchador. El Pistole for some reason was the first thing that jumped in my head. I'm just like, yeah, man, you know, El Pistole, that sounds cool. And like all it was like it was just like kind of a cholo gimmick with a mask on, but it was like it wasn't a original mask. It was what the hell is his name? Sasuke the Great, like the rip-off Great Sasuke that had like the robot face. You know what I mean? It was that mask with like Conan style, like flannel, where it's only like buttoned at the top and then the rest of it's opened and whatnot. And I would go to the ring to like lowrider doing like
urban luchador
salsa dances and whatnot, just like completely obnoxious, dude. Like at one point I used to do the Curry Man dance, but I would make my hands into guns because I was El Pistole or whatever. And it was just like obnoxious, dude. It was, you know, like it lasted the whole time because they were so low on people that I ended up having to do double duty every single time. So like they finally got past the point of like letting me be something other than the luchador, but they still wanted me to the luchador. So like every AWF show, the first match always had El Pistole in it because I had to be later on in the card too, you know, and like just to look back and just to think back on that now, it's just like it's funny to me, you know. Like other than that though, like there's really no Uber gimmicks or any crazy things like that.
How about Dagon then? Any early Florida gimmicks for you that you'd like to actually talk about?
Yeah. When I first started, my wrestling name was Twister. And I was a storm.
Off to a good start.
I was a storm of sorts, and I really didn't want the gimmick. It was kind of given to me, and my first show was for the guy who trained me. It was his deal, so I did whatever he wanted to do. I came out to AC/DC, you know, it was just like bubblegum babyface bullshit. Probably within half a year, I went to Dagon Briggs, and that was just kind of something that I wanted to do the whole time. But my translation, from Twister to Dagon, what I did was I created this mask out of like cardboard paper and like a sleeve from a t-shirt, and I made it looked like a Liger mask, but we called it the Reaper. And I would do these like walk-on spots like during a match, and everybody would kind of like stop what they were doing and like, what the fuck is going on? And I would just kind of like put my hands out.
We don't know either.
Tip my head to the side, and like it would do some kind of distraction, and somebody would get screwed, and the match would end that way. I did that for a while, And ultimately, that was what led to my Dagon gimmick. But realistically, my Dagon gimmick has just been kind of an evolution the whole time. Like I started with face paint. I was a big misfit, fiend kind of gimmick. I wore the skeleton outfits. I got the La Parka tops, and I painted my face when I first started wrestling, and then I realized that was kind of really not that cool of a thing because it got all everybody's gear. And then within the last couple of years, I've gone back to painting my face again because it pisses people off, and I think that's kind of awesome.
It's all over my gear too.
So, I would say,
just different evolutions of Dagon Briggs over the years as far as like the look.
Whatever's
and,
poppy at the time.
Right, exactly. Oh, no, that's cool. Now, how about get to the first time you guys met each other, or whatever show it was at, or outside of a show. Any story about that?
It's probably it was probably those shows for Jody Peterman up in Valdosta. But it's funny because I don't ever remember any interaction whatsoever. But I'm pretty sure you were there at some point. You know what I mean? Like
I worked some of the shows.
Yeah.
I think it was more when we started picking you up for the Savannah shows because we actually were interacting in the P train. I mean, besides you knowing of me dropping somebody on his head at the at the World One shows,
I didn't even know about that either. You know what I mean? It's not like I was watching the other matches or anything.
Would you like to go ahead and tell that story now that we're on the
Jake
Slater story? Right.
Yeah, I don't really remember the show specifically. I do know.
I remember the show specifically because I was at the show in the audience.
That was one of the first shows that we brought you with us.
I don't think we rode together, but I was at the show and I had known you at that point. But yeah, you had the Jake Slater thing where you dropped him on his head.
I gave him a Tenzan bomb.
Yeah.
It was the deal. He was going to go over in the match. I decided on my way down there that day that I wanted to drop somebody on their head via Tenzan bomb. And the only way I was going to do it was by putting somebody over. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Let me drop you on your head and then you go.
I remember John Davis taking me aside afterward and totally giving me a high five because he thought that was the nastiest shit he'd ever seen in his life up until that point. You know what I mean? So.
And speaking of John Davis, that was the same show. Remember the story about John Davis and Wardell Walker working the Midnight Express.
And the Midnight Express not wanting to have anything to do with them because they have color to their skin.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. Every time the boys got in the ring, the Midnight Express would take a headlock, walk to their corner, tag out, and tag the third of their 6-man tag jobber into the ring so that those two guys could do their spots.
How quickly did you guys become friends or really started interacting outside of the shows as well, like here in Jacksonville?
I think within the first couple of Savannah shows that we did shots for, we started hanging out. We would, we'd go out to eat after the shows, or we'd start hanging out during the shows. The whole road trip up was a good outlet for us to kind of yap with each other and, agree and disagree and shit like that. Especially when we're riding up with Brian Kelly and Wardell Walker and John Davis. There's plenty of shit between, the five of us to talk about and plenty of opinions there, definitely.
Right. Yeah. Maybe we'll jump ahead to the first time you guys maybe started trying to come up with a tag team for each other and working with each other, kind of leading into the origin of the Loggers and the Logger gimmick.
The Loggers started with this dude here.
Yeah. Well, when we would do those road trips, we'd one of his big things to do is talk about all the Uber gimmicks, you know what I mean, that he would like to do. And I mean, there's just a laundry list of them, you know what I mean? Richard Cranium is a good one.
Richard Cranium.
He's a dickhead, bro.
Man, I can list off a few. Give us a story idea. How about the Nazi not me?
Be like a Nazi that is a Nazi, but he doesn't realize he's a Nazi, so that his whole shtick is he'd be like, Nazi, not me.
Or the creepy softball coach.
The creepy softball coach would be somebody that has giant balls and wears tight shorts, and that's all you see underneath, and they do a lot of inappropriate touching, which If you follow the news right now, it's totally like goes with everything. So.
And then Richard Cranium, you guys were going into
He's
it.
the biggest dickhead in the business.
Dickhead, bro. Just awesome, you know, and like
girls don't like him, moms don't like him.
He's just got like this laundry list of Uber gimmicks, dude. And like the only like, because I've always been Jack Manley, you know what I mean? Like I'm you know, anytime I've ever tried to do anything other than Jack Manley, people are just like, "What the hell is wrong with you, bro? Your name is Jack Manley. Like, why would you be anything? Yeah, why would you be anything other than Jack Manley?" You know what I mean? So like, the only time I ever had this thought of doing anything outside of it was just as a joke, you know what I mean? But Lumberjack Manley, you know, I was just like, yeah, you know, it's simple, it's a play on words, you know, it's kind of funny, I guess, you know what I mean? Lumberjack Manley.
Didn't you say though when you first started it was like the Manley brothers, or it was?
Well, when I was out in LA at the Inoki Dojo, I did the Manley brothers, this tag team gimmick, the Manley brothers, and like it was funny because like my brother Tim. My boy back from Vegas, kid's like Filipino, dude. So like we're the Manley brothers, and here's my brother Tim, who's Filipino. And it's like we're the Manley brothers. It's like, okay, well, way to go, Dave Marquez. That makes a lot of sense right there, dude. You know, but back to Lumberjack Manley, it was just like the only thought outside of like a legitimate gimmick. You know what I mean? Because it's already like one of those gimmicks that's been through the annals of pro wrestling over God knows how long, you know what I mean? Like, there's been lumberjacks in pro wrestling since, like, the dawn of man.
1800s.
Yeah, so, like, it was just kind of a natural thing that way, and Lumberjack Manley is something I never in a million years had any intention of ever trying to, like, do anything with it, you know, it's just like, haha, you know, if I had Uber gimmick, it'd be Lumberjack Manley, and that's funny, and haha, you know, whatever, and like, we go on and on about that, and like, I actually throw Lumberjack Manley out there, and for some reason or another, he thought it was cool, he thought it was funny, and then he thought that he would interject himself on it, and come up with, man, if I was a lumberjack, this would be my name, and then like, it just kind of steamrolled from there, you know what I mean, like, it just kind of started as throwing ideas back and forth, and just kind of, yeah, like it snowballed from there, and like being a big lover of the Aqua Teen Hunger Force, like a big mark for Carl, you know what I mean, and he's got like this New Jersey accent, and he's just like, hey, what are you doing in my house without my permission?
What are you doing with my personal property and your possession?
Oh, and like, yeah, somehow, some way, like just riding down the road, marking out for Carl, like when you're taking like a 5-hour road trip to a show and you're marking out for Carl and you're like, hey, like it takes a strain on the vocal cords, man. Like you can't sit there and go, hey, all day long like this. So like,
and you're hoarse the next day.
So you sort of turn the hey into a
well, no, it's just like it's over the course of time. Hey, it's like, man, I can't do this. So like when we're talking about Carl, it's just, you know, we talk like this because it's just easier that way. You know, it doesn't take the strain on the vocal cords. You know, and like. It's funny because, like, as the evolution came about, you know what I mean? Like, we kind of did those things, and like over the course of time now, like the loggers at the start, it was very raw. It was very like, you know,
it was like viral video.
Yeah, it's not quite sure. We're not quite sure what it is, but we kind of think it's funny, and we're halfway wasted right now. So
it was more skit. Yeah, it was more.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be something that you'd see on like, you know, Mad TV or something like that. It's just a character, you know what I mean? And like, it's funny to look back on it now and see how it's, because even like the, you know, the little things, like I attribute most of the little things to him, you know what I mean? Like the speech. You know, like, you know, when you talk like this and you start doing these things, but then, like, you know, you start talking like this. You've got these things that
a lot of mine's like, I would say is like Will Ferrell doing like George Bush.
Yeah,
like, that's where I get to like ho ho ho.
Yeah, exactly. Like the shoulder shrugging and the head bobbing, like, you know, like that's all him, dude. You know, and it's funny to like how it's all come together.
It's just goofball, you know, like people identify with stuff like that, and they are gravitated to people like that because they're not, people that are goofballs aren't going to be like judgmental and stuff like that.
Well,
so like that's,
not only that too, too, but it's just like, I think for the both of us, it was so like out of left field in comparisons to anything else we've ever done. You know what I mean? Like he's always been misfit, hard ass, whatever. You know, I'm always like chicken shit heel, like, you know, beat me up because I'm a bitch. So like, it was very refreshing too, just to like have something to put yourself into that was so different than anything else you've done before. You know, it just like it's like a fresh canvas to paint on. You know what I mean? And like and there was no definition of what it was. Again, it's just like it just kind of over time grew into its own thing. You know what I mean? Like the loggers kind of just found its own way. You know what I mean? Because it was never like, oh man, we should do this and we should do this. It's like, oh, you know, I went out here and I said this. It's like, oh, that's funny, man. I like that. Hey, let's do that. Should keep doing it. It's not like we ever sat down and had a conversation about it. It's just like, you know what? I kind of feel that, so I'm just gonna keep doing it.
Throw it out there.
Yeah.
The crowd would like it. And stick with it.
Yeah, absolutely, bro.
Well, let's sort of lead that in then to the first time you guys did it on camera, which wasn't even a match. It was just a goofy promo called The Loggers Know How to Party. You want to talk about that?
I don't even, like, and that's the thing, too. It's like, I couldn't sit here and tell you, like, what the motivation for doing it was. Like, it was like...
We were so hyped on the gimmick.
Yeah, I think at that point it was just like, man, we're so not doing anything, you know what I mean? Like, we're stagnant. We're just two regular guys going out there having matches for the sake of having matches, and like nobody wanted to do anything other than that with us, you know what I mean? And you know, like creatively, you want to do something more.
There's
than
a
that.
time where at wrestling shows, like you're not the main focus of the show, but you're good enough to be on the show, so you don't get storylines, you don't get angles, you just get straight matches, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just like professionally and personally, you get to a point to where you want to kind of invest yourself into something to where you give a shit about it.
Yeah. Creatively, it's very like I don't know, like complacent. You know what I mean? Like you go out there and it's like at that point, you know, like when I was out here in Florida, it's nothing but 4-way scramble cruiserweight matches. Just complete waste of time. It's like, God, you're like, why the hell do you even book these matches anyway? Like, they're stupid, they're a waste of time, like, they don't do anything for anybody, you know what I mean? And it's like, that's, like, for the period of time, that's all I was doing, like, that's all anybody would ever book me into.
And creatively, you can't learn anything from it.
Yeah, like, it's just like, what are you gonna grow from, you know what I mean? Like, how do you expect to spread yourself out that far?
You got 7 minutes, everybody's got 2 minutes to do spots.
Yeah, and like majority of people in the business want to get their shit in and do all that thing, so it's like,
about the match.
Yeah, like you're not trying to build story or to do anything other than just like, oh man, I got this move, and this move to do, how can we fit it in somewhere, it's like...
And then when you do randomly in those matches get somebody like him who understands that you have to get the match over, he will back off and be willing to put the match over, and most people don't realize that shit, you know what I mean? That like they'll be like, man, that match was pretty good because of maybe stuff like he did because the other 5 motherfuckers were worried about doing, spinning DDTs and fucking moonsaults that they've seen, 900 times before.
Yeah. So it's just like, I think the frustration from all that was the basis for like having such a willingness to be like, fuck it, blogger, yeah, man, lumberjack gimmick, yeah, man, hell yeah. Because at the time too, it was like the big occupational the big thing at that period was like everybody had like the occupational gimmick because you had like the lifeguards, like everybody like had the trade gimmick where it was
Southeast territory. So.
Yeah, Florida in general, like the lifeguards was a real like big. I would say the lifeguards was a big motivation into doing it just because they did it and it worked out so well for them at that time that we were just like, well, if people can get behind lifeguards, they can get behind lumberjacks. Why not?